I want to get into something with another special guest. You've heard all about these jitters, the markets, the Trump recession talk, economists concerned there's no stable leadership from the White House with these growing signs of a potential recession, and Trump is flip-flopping one day to the next on his own plans of what to do about it.
Payroll taxes. I've been thinking about payroll taxes for a long time. Whether or not we do it now or not is it's not being done because of recession.
Will we see a payroll tax cut which is aimed at
I'm not looking at a tax cut now. We don't need it.
Okay, Tuesday, yes, Wednesday, no. He did the same thing on an issue that would benefit mostly no one other than the very rich, which is something they call indexing of the capital gains tax.
So we're talking about indexing, and we're always looking at the capital gains tax.
You said you have the executive authority to index capital gains.
I'm not looking to do indexing, so I don't want to do that. No.
Why so much contradiction out in the open? Well, there are reports that Trump is privately telling people he's concerned, even rattled about this potential recession, which might affect his thinking as he jumps back and forth about what he might do and worried that he could lose the election over it. But then in public, he denies it all.
The fake news, of which many of you are members, is trying to convince the public to have a recession. Let's have a recession. The United States is doing phenomenally well.
We always look for new and interesting voices. A first-time guest on the beat is someone you have certainly heard of, a businessman, an entrepreneur, a fashion designer, Steve Madden, founder and former CEO of the company that bears his name. Nice to see you.
It's good to be here.
You are following one of the rules in tech, which is the more successful you are, the less you have to dress up.
I like it, yes. Well, if Trump would give me a job in his administration, I'd work in the economics department. I might take off my hat.
You would take off your hat for that public service. Well, let's start right there.
He needs a little help.
He claims to be a deal maker.
Yeah.
You are actually known to be a deal maker.
Yes.
Assess him on what we just saw. Does that back and forth matter to the economy? Does it hurt anything? Does it help when he just goes, oh, we might do this, we might do that?
So I think that he got himself in over his head with China. And, he's negotiating against a guy that's president for life, and Trump is only president for another 2 years. So he's got not as much leverage as the other guy. And I think the Chinese thing is hurting the economy. The tariffs are hurting the economy. They're forcing prices up. People are going to lose their jobs. It's just terrible for the economy.
Well, and Steve, as you know, that's where the economics meet the politics. Because what are the two things that people know that Trump did? I'm not talking about the tweets and the talk. What has he done regarding the economy? Everybody knows there was a big tax cut, but it went mostly to the top, and there's a trade war on.
Yeah.
And you're saying the trade war doesn't help Americans.
The trade war is hurting Americans. It really is. So much of what we have, from our iPhone to our Steve Madden shoes, comes from China. And not all my goods come from China, but it's just going to force prices up. It's going to squeeze margins, cost jobs. It's a terrible thing.
Now,
disrupt supply
we never
chains.
know, Steve. We never know when you mention your name whether you're self-promoting or plugging your business. We can't tell the difference.
I'm doing all of it.
Because it's all one and the same.
Yeah.
What about the pushback that someone would say is, oh, okay, Ari's talking to rich Steve Madden, who's got a business interest in China.
Yeah.
And, of course, Steve Madden doesn't like the tariff war. And, gosh, if we really beat China, if Trump wins, his aides and his economic guys and Larry Kudlow would say, we're going to beat China, and in the long run, we're going to get more shoes made here instead of Steve Madden shoes made elsewhere. What do you say to that?
We're not going to make any shoes in America. But we have other jobs in America. We have design jobs. We have marketing jobs. We have retail jobs, creative jobs. So it's shifted. We just don't have the hands that make the shoes now. They're made offshore.
And you're saying, I just want to be very clear, you're saying that even if you envision a fan fiction video game MAGA universe where Trump beat China, whatever that means, you're saying those shoes wouldn't come back to America, they'd be made in a different country.
No, we're just going to move production to Mexico or to Vietnam.
Got it.
Or to Africa, things like that.
You're a boss. You're familiar with the term boss?
Yes, yes. Sometimes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bosses have to be held accountable sometimes.
Yes.
When you look at the polling on some of this stuff, it's always polarized. It's always, red and blue. But there is an overwhelming majority of people, we're going to put this up here, that say if there is a recession, and Trump's worried about it, 69% of people say they would hold Trump accountable. Is that what you think would happen?
Of course, he's in charge, so he's going to be held accountable, and I think it'll hurt him. And if he's watching, I implore him to end these tariffs. It's really hurtful, and it's causing so much chaos, disrupting supply chains. It's going to cause a recession.
Is China outsmarting him, or they just have more runway? Because they just, as you alluded to, they just have more time. I mean, we are on a political calendar.
Yeah. You're
dealing with, what do you ever want to call it, an autocratic country.
Yeah, it's different.
They don't have a time limit to fight him out.
He's trying to do something. He's trying to help. The president is trying to do something, okay? But he's negotiating with the Chinese like he's negotiating with someone from Brooklyn is not going to work. It's just not going to work.
Yeah, Barbara Rez sounds like someone from Brooklyn.
Yeah, maybe.
All right, now we'll talk about the predictions. Nobody knows what's going to happen, but you know better than some. Everyone, the market's all over the place. Mick Mulvaney is privately telling the sort of Republican donor class, well, look, be ready for a, quote, moderate and short recession. Is that what you're bracing for? I'm
good at predicting heel heights. I just hope there's not a recession, and I don't want to see a recession just because it hurts the president. We don't want that. But some of the things that he's doing could be creating a recession.
Like other than the trade war?
Like the tariffs, like the deficit is just out of control. It's crazy. And the tweets are hurting. The flip-flopping in the tweets are hurting too. The tweets are really hurting because it undermines sort of confidence in things. And I know he knows better, and I hope he's watching, and I hope he stops doing it.
You say you hope he's watching. What do you know about him? You ever spend time with him?
I have met him a couple of times. I don't know him. I was a judge on the beauty pageant like 10 years ago or something. And, I think he means well. I just think he's misguided, and he really needs help. He needs to get some smart guys around him.
Means well on what? I mean, a lot of people don't feel he means well in Charlottesville or means well on children in cages.
He's made some mistakes. I'm not defending him. I'm just saying that I think when he wakes up, he means to do well, but I just think he's misguided. And I think that he just needs smart people around him.
You know how you're talking about him the way a lot of people talk about him in Washington, D.C., including when we talk to Republicans on background sometimes, which is they talk about him like he's 12. Like means well, but needs guidance. Well, he's the president of the United States.
Just has to hire. We have the smartest people in the world in America. The head of Goldman Sachs, the head of. Get some of those financial guys and surround yourself with them and try to make a good deal.
I got a final question for you off politics. Since you're here. Last question.
Yeah.
What's the biggest advice you give someone watching about personal finance, personal planning, how to live your life responsibly?
So, I would say. The most important thing I would say that's just not an answer to your question is
I love it. People
to
do that all the
young
time.
people, I want to say, when you go to work, try to do something you love doing. Don't do it for the money. Do it because you love doing it.
Don't do it for the paper.
Don't do it for the money. Do it because you love doing it, and the money will follow.
Interesting and concise. Steve Madden, first time on the beat. I hope you come back.
Yeah,
great to have you here. Nice hat. Go Yankees.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.